question is, why are you getting rejected, right? That's the
Good question.
real question. Because if you're getting rejected because of your approach, then you need to change your approach. If you're getting rejected because of things that are outside of your control, like your company had a hiring freeze and was acquired, and it was a big deal that like literally even the CFO can't do anything. It's a spending freeze across the board. That's a little more outside of your control. So if you keep losing over and over and over again and getting rejected over and over again, if it's happening in volume, it means that your messaging is not aligned.
All right, dude, let's kick off. So it's very interesting, right? Because usually a lot of my guests, I would have like done loads of background on and I would have followed them for years. But how I knew this was going to be a good conversation was because my mate, Christian Kraus, which you may be familiar with, another
Yeah,
sales guy, he was on my show and he was like, oh, like maybe like one day I could be like as good at sales as like Ian. And I was like, oh, Ian. And then a couple of weeks later, I was reading Marcus Chan's book and I read the intro that you wrote. And I was like, there's the name again. And as I was thinking in my head, I was like, this guy is first and foremost a good person, or he's very helpful. And then everything else then has come concurrently to your work. So I thought that was pretty interesting, a pretty interesting intro to who you are.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I don't know if Christian left his company, or I think he did. I think he just started doing coaching full time recently. He announced it, and he approached me maybe 3 years ago, and he said, "Ian, your content is really solid. It's underrepresented." I mean, he's like, I might have had like 4 or 5,000 followers on LinkedIn at the time. He's like, more people need to see your stuff, and this is amazing or whatever. And that was like early on in my journey to like growing a personal brand, and now like I've gotten, fortunately, a lot more publicity, and my stuff has been featured a lot more. And Marcus is one of my mentors, and he helped me get started in this business. And then he asked me to write his the foreword to his book, and that was a big honor for me. So those two guys were at the very beginning and towards the end of my journey into my own business. So it's cool that you had both of them on the show.
Isn't it interesting how like to some people would think they're competitors, but he obviously understand the value of putting your heads together and seeing the benefit that can come out from that. So isn't that very funny how like they were influenced to in a positive route instead of, oh, we should be against each other and fighting.
Yeah, I don't think it does any good. I mean, your only competition, as far as I'm concerned, is yourself. You can't control what other people are doing. And the more you look outside as to what others are doing as a competitive threat, the less you're going to be focused on executing what you need to do to be the best version of yourself. And so for me, I just look at, it's the old phrase, a rising tide lifts all boats. If we're all in the business of helping salespeople perform their best, if we're all in the business of, teaching the right way to do sales and the right way to live life, then if someone doesn't want to work with me because Marcus is a better fit, great. And if someone doesn't want to work with Marcus because maybe they feel like what I focus on is better, great. And Christian has a different focus, as far as who he helps. So when you go down to like when you get to know these people, what you'll see is their expertise and their niche and kind of who they serve is always a little different, because we all have different backgrounds and different stories. Like I'm not, a lot of people who come into my program are in recovery, or, somehow, they have a spiritual connection. Maybe they're Christian. Like you attract people that are like you, and that have similar values. And as long as we're all teaching things that are true and that are good, I'm all for learning from my peers and sending them business if I'm not a fit. So I just want to help my clients however I can.
Yeah, man, that's actually awesome because it's the opposite to a fixed mindset. You know that the whole idea is that there's more money out there or there's more clients out there, the world is bigger, there's a better opportunity there for you. What I'd like
Totally.
to ask you on this, man, is like, your mindset's very strong and that's a big part of what you discuss. How do you compare like your mindset before you started trying to like really focus in on stuff and really try and move it, versus now whereby, you know, you have this very much growth mindset perspective?
I'd say one was like a scarcity mindset and one is an abundant mindset. It's the polar opposite. So a scarcity mindset is like one in which you're out for yourself. I'm very self-centered. Everything I do is for me to make a lot of money and for me to
Mm-hmm.
better myself. And I'll just tell you, like, this wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a gradual evolution for me as I got older and I started to align with my values and what was important for me. But I used to be very self-centered, and it took having a near-death experience for me to wake up and realize that, hey, if I died in that moment, my life wouldn't have mattered, and I wouldn't have really left a mark in bettering, the lives of other people. And that's the abundant mindset is, I'm here to help, I'm here to serve. I want to serve as many people as possible versus just serving myself and being out for my own interest, which is that scarcity type of mindset, which I think is, no matter how successful you are, you're always going to be chasing, you're always going to be unhappy and unfulfilled if you're just out for yourself versus trying to serve and help other people.
What was that experience?
I got stuck at a roller coaster upside down. So we were dangling 180 feet in the air. I don't know what that
Oh,
is.
sorry. I thought that was a metaphor.
No, I actually got stuck on a roller coaster upside down and
What?
was hanging in the air. Yeah, it was
Oh my
horrific
God.
for 30 minutes. And I thought, it was one of those flying coasters. So the track is above you and there's just like a little bar right here. And I'm just hanging, staring down at the cement, 18 story. It's like being at the top of an 18-story building, hanging down. And it was horrible, but it got me thinking about what was important in life. And I'm glad I went through it because that was my wake-up call to start actually taking action and start serving other people, and in a big way. That's when I started my coaching business. That was December 28th, 2018. So it's been over 4 years since that happened.
Oh my God. And how did that end? Like when you're hanging upside down, like did people come to save you or what happened?
People were passing out on the ride, like literally screaming, like saying,
Oh,
because
because
your blood
the
is
blood.
rushing to your
Yeah.
head. Yeah, the blood's going to your head and people are screaming. And it was horrible. It was genuinely awful. And I kid you not, like during that moment, I was praying and I'm like, God, please get me off. God, please get me off. I thought about my wife. I thought about my kid, Max, my son. And I'm like, if I died now, like I will have not, I don't know. It was a feeling like my life would have been wasted. That's the only way I can explain it because I hadn't made a difference. And it was also a feeling that I had a lot of knowledge and expertise that I had kept to myself and used solely for the betterment of my own life. And that was like just so loud and clear to me. So I started praying. I'm like, God, I promise I'm going to start helping people. I promise, like, just get me off the fucking roller coaster, get me off of this thing. And then I waited, nothing happened, waited. I'm like, God, I'm going to start right now. I'm going to start right now. I'm not going to wait anymore. And then boom, I kid you not, right when I said that, the roller coaster, like a few seconds later, started going. I'm like, oh my Lord. So that was like a real moment for me when my faith was strengthened and my purpose was strengthened, and it just, everything shifted there. It was like, I'm not going to wait anymore. And so that kind of like started my journey into coaching.
Holy shit, man, that is wild. You're quite an open person that I've realized, is that like the way you discuss things and we go into detail. What do you think that's because of? Has that come from sales? Has that come from different aspects of your life?
I think it comes from recovery. The stuff, I was in recovery for porn and sex addiction, and part of that recovery, no one talked about. It's very taboo. People think, addiction, they think alcohol, but I was
Mhm.
struggling with porn and compulsive sexual behavior, and it's a lot. It's something that a lot of men are really struggle with, but they do it in silence. They do it, because it's a lot of shame and it's taboo. And for me, as part of like being open about the story, I've kind of shared a lot. So
Yeah.
in sharing about my recovery journey, I've gotten, I would say, comfortable talking about things that are generally very uncomfortable for a lot of people to talk about. And that's been, for me, something that has shifted my openness because it's such a taboo topic. So I think that's where it came from. And also, like, the more that I realize that I'm not alone, the more that I realize fundamentally that this is something that a lot of other men were struggling with. I think that changed a lot, because once the more I shared and became vulnerable, then other people started opening up and saying, you know what, I have this problem too. This is something I struggle with. So I just realized that in order to help other people, you need to help people realize that they're not alone, that this is something that you shouldn't bring shame to. And, you know, I don't know. I want to help. I genuinely want to help people. I don't go on podcasts for building my business. I used to in the beginning, but now I find myself talking more and more about the deeply personal things that truly can help people find meaning and purpose in their life. And the other thing is just relatability. I think I've been told that I'm very relatable. A lot of the struggles that I've had in my life, and kind of some of not only the challenges I've had, but also the triumphs I had, are things that people aspire to achieve. So me sharing and telling people how I was able to, you know, overcome addiction, or how I was able to make $1 million in sales, and how I was able to start a business and grow that to 7 figures in a year. Like, these are things that people genuinely want to do. And so if I keep the secrets to myself, I'm not helping anyone. So it does go back to that moment on the roller coaster of actually like wanting to make a difference for other people.
You also inject a element of, like, you know, just normal human being into it as well, because a lot of people who are like the 7-figure entrepreneur try to play this killer card, and therefore they're not necessarily relatable, but also they kind of close it off. But I love the fact that you're very helpful for people,
What's
because,
a killer
you know,
card? What is a killer card? What do you mean by play a killer card?
some people just pretend, like, have like a show, they're kind of like have their own close group of friends, and they don't leave other people kind of in, and they're not very like open to other people. But you're very, open to helping. We discussed over message beforehand. You're very open, and a lot of people aren't kind of like that. Sometimes they try to play like a fence. And I've even noticed that, with different people at different times, and it's a shift. And I can see how you've been able to help so many people, maybe through recovery. That's giving you a perspective to be more open.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how else to live, to be honest. I
Yeah.
mean, I try not to. It comes at a fault sometimes, because I spend so much time talking to people and taking
Yeah.
calls, and a lot of them are paid, but many of them aren't. Right? I sponsor a guy in addiction recovery, and we meet every week without fail. And sometimes we're supposed to be 30 minutes a week, but sometimes it's an hour call if he needs my help, or sometimes there's after hours. I'll go to
Yeah.
I took a call last week with someone who was struggling with porn addiction. We talked for an hour and a half, and it's like, you're not making money. I charge $1,500 an hour for my coaching, and it's always booked. So it's like, I could look at it as like time is money and have that killer attitude, and I can't help you. Or I can say, well, what is your purpose here? And
Mm.
genuinely, it's not like I'm a charity, I'm not just like giving stuff away for free, but I generally find if you help as many people as you can without expecting anything in return, the money and the profit and the business comes from that. So I've taken that approach to business, and I mean, just to give you some numbers for context, like,
Yeah.
I launched my coaching platform in May of 2021. No, we're in 2023. In May of 2022 was when I launched it. So it's been less than a year, and my business digitally online has done $1.3 million in less than a
What?
year. Yeah. When I launched, didn't I didn't have any ads. There was
Yeah.
no sales team. It was pure go online and spend $6,000 or $12,000 and put a credit card in, and no sales calls, no phone calls. And it sold out on the launch with no sales calls. So the
What?
goodwill I had built up for several years of giving and helping and serving came back to me, and it still continues to come back to me. So for me, there's a great book. It's called The Go Giver. It's by a guy named Bob Berg.
Mm.
And it says the secret to selling as much as you want is to give away as much as you can. So I've done that with my approach to content, with my approach to YouTube training videos, with my going on podcasts. Zig Ziglar has a great quote. It says, in order for you to get what you want, you must help as many other people get what they want first.
Hmm.
And I just feel like that's so true. I feel like, I don't know, that's just really played out well for me. And it's enjoyable to give. It feels good, but also it does come back to you in your business. If you do the right thing and you help other people, they're going to want to work with you. So, yeah, that's kind of when I started this podcast, when we talked about it, I said, I'm like so busy. Here's my calendar. Well, it's because I've taken this approach and now I have 130 paying clients and it's just gotten a little overwhelming. So now I'm at a point where I need to scale back and say no a lot more because I think I've earned that and I've given enough, and my YouTube channel's enough where if people want free advice, they can go watch the videos or go to the newsletter, but I just can't give away my time the same way that I used to because I don't have the time, or else it's cutting into my clients or my own business, which I don't want to
Yeah.
do.
You're also at a different stage of maturity in your business now. In the beginning, it's you're shitting your pants trying to build it. Now that you've built it, you're at 1.3 million, you can start doing other things, hiring and everything. I
Yeah.
learned that helping aspect from your video of inward versus outward mindset. I
Yes.
thought it
Yes.
was fucking amazing, man, because the reason being is like definitely what I struggled with in the beginning was like, problem, solution. Here, let me fuck it down your throat on a discovery call. Whereas what you're describing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the fact that you're always helping a client, and you're like, oh, maybe let me just try help you more and help you, and let's check, can I help you? So can you maybe
Mhm.
explain that concept in more detail? Because I've actually I guess I'm only still learning this stuff, and I think for a lot of people as well, they're not necessarily trained, especially people who are founders in this area.
Well, I mean, it doesn't need to be on a discovery call, but like, I'll just give you an example. Today I had a guy who's one of my clients and he's looking for work and he's having trouble finding a job. He was impacted by the tech layoffs, which we're seeing a lot of right now. And I'm like, he's like, do you know any recruiters? Can you refer me anywhere? I'm like, you know what? I'm going to show you how it's done. And I put out a post on LinkedIn and I said, hey, I have several people, because it wasn't just him, that are impacted by the layoffs. I'm looking for an independent sales recruiter that's aware of companies that are hiring and can connect some really good AEs with them. And I got like 50 plus referrals of people. And I just started pinging the people I know that are looking and connecting them. And it's like that happened so quickly, but it was coming from a place of like, I'm just trying to help you out. Like I want you to find a job. I'm sorry you're discouraged, but he was going about it the wrong way. It's all about who you know. And so if I vouch for some people, they're going to get in. So it's those things, like being aware of what you can do and doing something about it. And then on discovery calls, it's if you want to just break it down into its simplest framework, if you treat discovery with the sole intention of understanding where a client or a prospect needs help and determining if you can help them. If that's the lens by which you do discovery, then you're going to spend a lot more time being interested in the person you're talking to and really understanding what their world looks like, where they're challenged, what they're trying to accomplish, what their goals are. And then if your product or service actually can help you, they're going to lean in. They're going to say, well, what do you suggest? And that's the way it should be done. It's so easy when they tell you they have a problem or a goal and you just want to jump to the solution to talk about all the great things you can do and how you can help them and who else you've helped. But the reality is that's just giving them information. If you really spend more time understanding their current environment, their current challenges, what their world looks like, what specifically would be the goals of like, if I jump on a coaching call with somebody, okay, I don't do these anymore because of my limited time, but in the beginning, building up my business, I was going on a lot of discovery calls to see if someone would be a good fit for my coaching. All I would ask them is, where are you struggling right now? Where do you feel like need help? Tell me about your company. Tell me how your performance is right now. Are you working a full day, or do you feel like you're not working to your full potential? How do you feel about yourself? What kind of money have you made? What do you want to make? Why do you think coaching would help you? What specific areas are you looking to develop in your personal life and in your professional life? And like, really ask all those questions. And then I'm like, if they tell me things that are relevant, like I'm really struggling with time management and organizing my day. I feel overwhelmed. I feel really busy and I'm just doing things, but I'm not doing the important things. I know that I can help them because I have a big module on habits and prioritization, and I got off Adderall. And, I'm not perfect, but I was able to do a lot in a very short amount of time in both my sales business and in my own entrepreneurship journey. And so I know I can just teach them what I do. If they tell me they're struggling with strategic sales and
Yeah.
they are more transactional and they need to be more strategic and multi-thread and work bigger deals, I know I can help them because that's what I did. If it's not something I'm qualified for, or I don't feel like I can help them, I'm not going to sell them anything. But most of the time, after these calls and people tell me what they need, I'm like, great. Well, here's how I'd help you. Here's what I'd suggest. And then how does that sound? And they're going to say, yeah, they might be concerned a little bit about pricing if they don't have the money or something, and I'll try and work it out with them. So we can make it make sense. And that has to happen once in a while. But for the most part, people just want to know you can help. They want to trust and believe that working with you will be the right fit. And if you don't know enough about them and their business and their situation to confidently tell them you can help them, then your deals are probably not going to go anywhere, and they're just going to take the information and sit on it. So that's kind of like, the more you get them talking and the more that is helping people, just
Yeah.
getting them to share and and tell you about their situation, and then telling them what you suggest. And most of the time it's working with you. Or if it's not, I would suggest someone else. I had a CEO that I was working with that I literally pointed to someone else. I gave him a referral and said, I'm not your guy. He wanted something from me that I just don't do anymore. So I referred business, and that was what I did for him. And he was very happy. So
You're really focusing on just understanding their pain points, challenges, and desired outcomes
yeah,
versus
that's it.
selling them fucking
That's
something
it.
random.
That is it. If you ever read the book Spin Selling, it gets into this really well. And it's one of the classics. Gap Selling is another one that talks about that from Keenan. Spin Selling is from Neil Rackham. It says situation. What's the situation today? P is problem. What's not working? What needs to change? Why are you talking to me? Why'd you take this meeting? It's like, I just want to learn what you didn't know. Tell me why you want to learn. What's causing you to want to learn, right? So get to the root problem. And then I in SPIN stands for implicate pain. Okay, what's that problem costing you? What's the impact of that problem? How is that hurting your business? How's that hurting your employees? What is the pain associated with that? And then need payoff. Hey, if you were to fix this, what could you do instead? How would this help you? So that's the outcomes, desired outcomes. So if you just kind of stick to that framework on a discovery call, generally it works really well because people want to be seen and heard, and that's all you're doing. You're just interested. I always tell people, be interested, not interesting, right? The more interested you are in others, the more interesting you become to others, because that's when they lean in and say, hey, well, what would you suggest? How can you help? I've just told you all this stuff. Like, what can you do? It would help me.
And man, I'm laughing because the amount of fucking mistakes I've made in this aspect it's funny, and I love that cringe factor. You look back on your own work and you're like, fuck, you should have been like this, I should have been like that.
I
Because you
know.
learn over time, and I think that's the best kind of process for
Me
it.
too,
So
man. So what's happened before you ask me a question? I'm curious. So what happened when you cringe, when you think of the moments? Like, tell me an example of when you did it the wrong way and what was the result of that?
So I'll tell you when I did it the right way. So when I was doing a lot of consulting before, just consulting, nothing else, I remember people would probably could reach out to me. So I get on a call and I'd ask situations like, "Oh, like what problems can you solve? What problems are you looking to solve? What issues you having? How can I help? Whatever." And it'd be a bit more warm, bit kind of more friendly. The second I started kind of leveling things up, I knew when I started kind of running the problems when I started doing outbound. Because when I
Mhm.
got people on calls, the challenge was that I was trying to show my worth, and I would, either walk through things that we could change, I'd walk through different scenarios, I'd walk through different examples, and I would be talking more than listening. And the second that I started talking more and listening, even though I was giving them a solution, I think they felt like they weren't heard. And that was the
Yeah.
challenge. So afterwards they
Yeah.
were like, yeah, like this is a very good solution. This is something we could use. But I guess I never figured out what their actual real problem was. And in
Mhm.
contrast, now I'm very much on the listening side. We could spend 25 minutes just talking about the biggest challenges they have and just trying to come to some sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. That's it. And it's like the difference between a nice to have and a must have If you do all the talking, you become a nice to have. But if they do all the talking, you become a must have.
100%, man, 100%.
It's
So,
fascinating how that works.
and it's just small, because it reminds me of just anything. If we met on the street and we were discussing and you were telling me about something, certain issue, I could be like, oh, here's like an electrician that can help you fix something at
Mhm.
home, and here's a plumber that can help your pipes at home. So that's kind of like how a relationship's built. So I guess that's a good question from here, is that like, have you been building kind of meaningful relationships with people throughout your career, even when you're in Salesforce and the bigger companies, to try, has that been a big important play for you?
I think so. I think you have to play the long game. I mean, if you detach from the outcome of the meeting and just
Yeah.
focus on getting to know the person and seeing how and where you can help, and just kind of like not trying to be pitchy or salesy or something like that,
Yeah.
that's generally how good relationships are built, because relationships, by nature of the very word, extend over time. So one of the guys, I don't know if you know him, John Barros. Uh,
No.
he's in the same space as me and Marcus. Um, been a sales trainer, sales coach for a long time. I mean, I approached him humbly 3 or 4 years ago, and I went on this podcast. And it's like I said, I'm the top guy at Salesforce. Let me know if you ever want me to come on. Came on, and that was like one of my first podcasts I ever went on. And afterwards, I'm like, that was amazing. I'd love to do what you do. I'd love to pick your brain and see if you'd be open to sharing. And he jumped on a call with me, but it was like after I gave value to him by going on the podcast too. And he just like was an open book. He told me his revenue, he told me his business model, and we still keep in touch. And now, like, he's pinging me. He pinged me last week and he said, Ian, how do you structure your one-on-one calls? I want to understand. We might offer something similar. Now, normally some people might consider that a threat because I'm the one-on-one coaching guy, but I gave him the whole playbook. Here's what I do. Here's how I do it, because that's how it works when you're in the abundance mindset. You're not thinking again about just yourself. You're going to help people because it's the right thing to do. It's like, if you live as a miser, you're going to feel shitty. As you can be a Grinch and just hoard all your knowledge and your secrets, or you can actually like just not care as much and share and become a trusted advisor and an expert. And then people will seek you out. So I don't know. Like, the more I share, the more I get clear on like the value that I can bring. And, the more I talk about it, the more it solidifies. It's like you learn something, you do it, and then you teach it. And that's how you
Mhm.
get to be a master. And so I'm just teaching now a lot of stuff. And it's, yeah, I
It's
don't know.
interesting, man.
Yeah.
You have to be, and there's a interesting quote from Jordan Peterson. It was from Cain and Abel, where it's like, you need to be the fool to become the master, and by
Mhm.
only being the fool you can become the master. So everyone's like, when you reach out to that guy and you were trying to get on his show and stuff, he may have looked at you like, oh, nothing, but he was willing to help you. And now look at you now, like, as in highly respected, regarded, someone who's doing millions in revenue. And I think it's very telling, because like, it's important to lift people around you, and you've been discussing this already. And I think that's how we kind of build a brighter future, I guess, in some regards.
I think you just feel better. I mean, in general, it's like if you can, I don't know. I mean, I genuinely feel like it has to come um, at a balance. You can't just neglect yourself and your family
Yeah.
and your business. So I'm in a place right now where I'm very much at a point where I need to start saying no to,
Yeah.
to helping people, and it doesn't feel great, but I don't just say no and ignore them. I usually tell them why. I say, today someone reached out and it was a very humble request, and it was someone who needed help. And I said, I totally appreciate it, but these requests are coming in so much every day, and I just can't take any more calls now. Here's where I can help you. And I sent them some resources to my coaching program. And it was like, you know, otherwise people would just keep asking and asking and asking, and you spend all your
Yeah.
time literally on social media helping people and answering questions, and you're this guy, but that's not good either. Then you're just getting depleted.
Yeah.
It's like you're getting sucked dry, and that's not a good feeling. So I think you just have to strike a balance
Hmm.
between charging for knowledge and expertise and helping because it's the right thing to do in areas that are aligned with your life purpose. So when addicts come to me and say, I'm struggling with this, can you give me some time? I really could use someone to talk to. I generally will always take those calls, right? And it has nothing to do with my business because I feel like that's what God's calling me to do. But if it's just someone like today who's like, I'm having trouble getting into the C-suite past gatekeepers, I'm like, go take my coaching program. So I told him, I'm like, if you want support, like, and I'd given him a support before that. So anyway, yeah, you generally, I would recommend the book, The Go-Giver, because it really talks about this and how to deploy it. And I've been deploying it. It's helped me build a very, very strong business so far. I mean, we've done 400,000 and through March. What is today? March 6th. So
what?
Yeah.
So can you discuss some of those numbers? So when you started in 2021, like what have you been looking at so far? So 1.3 million. How does that break
So
down?
I did I'll give you the exact numbers. So in 2020, I was still working at Salesforce. I did about 70,000 in my own business, kind of doing coaching early hours in the morning, a few clients a week kind of thing. In 2021, I did 530, I think it was, in my coaching business and 360 at Salesforce. So now my coaching business surpassed Salesforce. So I did 900K and I'm like, why would I do Salesforce anymore? It doesn't make any sense. I have too much demand in coaching. In 2022, I did 1.5 million in the revenue, 1.5 million USD. And then this
Where does
year,
that come from? Sorry to interrupt you. Where does that come
$1 million came from my online coaching business. 500,000 came from doing trainings at companies. So 2/3 of it came from the B2C. And then this year I've done 400,000 through February, I guess through March 5th. So call it 2 months. So that's a pace of 2.4 million, which I should break 2 this year. It's had a good start to the year. And that was all during a recession, economic downturn, so this approach is working really well of just building an audience and then having the offer. People are aware. I put my pricing on my website. I don't hide anything. It's like no sales calls. You can self-serve. It's all automated. And it's, I mean, the business is fortunately doing very well.
That is wild. What do you think is the main contributor? So you're building that audience. Like, when did you get really good at like writing and everything? You think that's a bigger factor?
Oh yeah. I mean, I grew my LinkedIn's at like, I don't know what it is now, 43,000.
43,000. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been writing every single day. So my strategy, what I recommend for anyone who wants to build a business or an entrepreneur or whatever is just like build your brand, build your audience. I would highly encourage anyone who wants to do what I do or, start a business and do something, similar to coaching or speaking or anything like that. I got my journey through Brand Builders Group. One of my mentors is a guy named Rory Vaden. So Brand Builders Group is a company I started working with in 2019 through 2020, early in my infancy of my brand. And they helped me with the content, with defining the ICP, with the strategy. So before I ever launched, I really had an idea of who I served, how I can help them, what I would do for go-to-market. They helped me with the messaging, the website, the content, and I've done so many workshops and so much work with them. I'm a huge believer in paying and getting help from people who've done it before, and that's all they did. So I went and invested, I don't know, it was around 20 grand or so with them. And then that was a big part of like getting the brand right. And the brand was focused on helping SaaS AEs go from good to great by mastering their mindset, their habits, and their selling skills. And so it was like really clear. It was tech AEs, mindset, habits, selling skills. And if you're curious about that, you can go to Brand Builders Group, and that company has a free brand strategy call. They, I don't know if you link in any of the show notes or anything, but they have a free brand strategy call. So if you refer them, I know the founder very well. Just tell them you heard about them from Ian. I've been on their podcast too. Those guys they're amazing at like helping you figure it out. So I had a lot of help. I'll just say that. Like I had the strategy right. I knew what the product was. I knew what the content was. But I spent, before I launched my formal online coaching program, which is the new product, Untap Your Sales Potential, which I launched in May of 2022. I had spent 2.5 years building up an audience by writing almost every day. And by posting one video a week onto my YouTube channel that went out to my newsletter and also on LinkedIn and in a blog. So I'd make one new piece of content per week that was video form, and I'd do writing every day. And then I got to a point where I could hire a writer, a ghostwriter to help me because it was just taking up so much time. So he analyzes what works really well, and he repurposes a lot of the top performing content to continue growing that audience. So do you guys do screen sharing at all? Is that something you can see?
Yeah, we can do it. We can do it for YouTube.
So if I go to like I'll just show for a second, you can kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about. I think for people on YouTube that are seeing this, you can see I have my LinkedIn feed. If I go here and I look at my my profile, so I'm about 42,000 people. I did 2 posts today.
Sick.
Yeah. So one this morning got, let's see how many views this got. It got 36,000 impressions, right? That was this morning's. Yeah. And then this one here got 19,000. So in today, it's over 56,000 impressions. And that's just, we're not even done with the day yet. But that came from posting. Yeah, it came from posting every single day. So if you go to like my activity history, and again, it didn't happen in the beginning. When I first started, I was getting very few views, but I just kept consistently putting out really, really good content. So, for example, like this is content about discovery. I put that out yesterday. It saw 30,000 impressions. So I'm talking about the goal of discovery. It's not to get your questions answered and check the box, but rather to know your client and understand their role, challenges, and priorities so you can determine if and where you can help them. It's what we just talked about. So that was seen 300 times. So every time you're posting, new people are following you. You're also getting leads in the inbox of people who want some help potentially in terms of, your coaching services. They look you up, they go to your YouTube, and you nurture them. So they don't immediately buy from you. Most of the people who wanted to buy from me had been following me once I launched my product. They had been following me for a year. They had seen a bunch of my videos, and it was like, whoa, I thought it's like this great online experience. It wasn't. That's not why they bought. The online was just the checkout. That was the last stage. Yeah. They bought because they already trusted me. That's how they were able to spend $6,000 or $12,000 online, because they trusted me to deliver, because I had delivered for them in so many ways via video and via text. And I think that's the key to this concept of like building your brand and helping as many people as you can, is like give away what you know, share from the heart. And in sharing, you get it out of you. You get out what you want to say, and you become a giver who just, when they have a thought, now they post about it, they write about it. So for me, like that is the key. If you have something valuable to say, or you can help some people, and you write a lot, you'll get better at writing. If you make videos, you'll get better at videos. My first year as a personal brand, after I was dangling off this roller coaster, was terrible in terms of building my brand. You know what I did, Darren, for how to build my personal brand?
Go ahead, tell me.
I went on Instagram every day and I made a short that was like a minute long. And I started getting all these people on Instagram like, yay, this is great. Amen. Blah, blah, blah. I didn't have a business. I didn't have a coaching. I didn't know I just wanted to literally just share what I knew. And it was a 365-day video challenge. I said, I'm going to make a video every day for a year straight. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to make a video every day. What can I do? That was my promise hanging off the roller coaster. It's like, what can I do every day to make the world a better place? I'm going to post a video. I chose Instagram because that's what Gary Vee told me to do. He said, that's a good channel. And that's who I followed. So I was like, okay, I'll just do that. And here's what happened. I got 0 coaching clients from doing this. And I spent a ton of time making these videos, but the biggest benefit was not my business. What I got good at was articulating and communicating stuff that was in my head. I got really good at making videos, and I got really comfortable on camera. So now when I want to make a video, it's like I have an idea, I make a quick video, I set it up, and now it's like that skill set and being able to talk to clients and being able to go on these podcasts. It's second nature to me because of all of that practice I got doing these these selfie type videos that I was doing on Instagram. So you just got to start. You don't need the perfect plan. You just got to start, and you start by thinking, well, what do I have to share? How can I help people? What can I, and you give it away. And by giving it away consistently, you build an audience. And then as you build an audience, you think of, and you work with a company like Brand Builders, ideally, or get a mentor or coach to help with you. And you figure out, how can I monetize this audience and actually charge them for services that are above and beyond the free things that I'm giving away, because that would help them exponentially. People don't pay for information. They pay for application. People pay to help you apply what you know to their life. So you can give all this information away, and it's great. What do I do with it? I'm having trouble actually doing the things you're saying. And that's when the coaching comes into play. So that's like the business model in a nutshell. That's what I attribute the growth to, is by the time I launched and had a formal product, I had such a big audience that they were ready to, frankly, to buy whatever I, was selling.
And along that process, were you also selling coaching before you released your formal product?
Yes, I was. And that's a great point, because I did coaching starting in 2019. I picked up, when I was doing the Instagram, I might picked up 1 or 2 clients. I mean, it was light, right? I told you my 2020 was 70K. I think 2019 was like 30K or something, like, very small. But what I heard when I was doing coaching in 2019, 2020 was all the problems people faced. Yep. I also started developing frameworks. Every time someone asked me, well, how do you do this? I'm like, well, here's how you do it. I'm like, wait a minute, I should make that into a module. I can talk. So it fed me stuff that I can use for content. And it also became the foundation of everything I started teaching in the formal program. So I used that coaching experience to then identify the content that people needed based on what I was hearing in the one-on-one calls.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned that you worked with like a brand to get your ICP correct, but that in itself is very important. The fact that you've been sitting with your clients, sitting with your customers, you were an AE as well, so you have like full exposure. So it's not like you're second guessing yourself. And man, that experience with the videos is amazing. Like, so for me, I recorded my first like 70 podcasts with people, and then I started recording my own videos, and it just came so natural because I had so much experience just discussing, just talking. And I wasn't even the formal character, I'm just a host, but it gave me so much basis that when I started writing, it was someone who's dyslexic, I actually was able to write really clearly over time, of course, as practice, because I was learning how to speak, how to write, how to read, write, speak, and it all works together. And it became just very, very powerful. And I use a few other tools as well. I don't know what you use as well for your writing, but I guess build like a content framework. And again, I'm at that small stage that you're at now at the moment, and I suppose my stuff is very niche, but it's sick though, because the feedback loop is so positive that you just keep doubling down, and then you see what's happening over a longer period.
Right. And you're real time. You're connected. You're not irrelevant teaching the same old things, because you're always like, all my stuff recently has been on the tech sales layoffs and how to sell in a tough economy in a market that honestly in 2020, 2021, when things were booming after the pandemic, because everyone moved to work from home, you could just be an order taker and do pretty well in sales if you just showed up, right? So now you actually have to really sell and get to power and sell to CFOs. And a lot of what I teach is more relevant than ever. So that's where I'm getting a lot of clients, is people need to upskill. But you're right. My story is, Ed Milet says this. He's amazing. He says, make your mess your message. Make your mess your message. So my mess was, I was a rep who was a hard worker, but didn't have the strategic selling skills. And I just thought I could out hustle and out grind everyone. And then when I got into enterprise at Salesforce, at the very like big leagues of selling, I failed. I bombed. I couldn't sell because hard work wasn't enough. I didn't have the strategic selling skills of multi-threading, of getting to power, of building a business case, building a point of view. And until I learned strategic selling, my results were, my real story is I thought I was a failure, and I never wanted to feel that way again. I was so tied up into like my self-worth being tied to my performance. And when I missed my quota 3 years in a row, I felt like it was the worst feeling in the world. It was like, I didn't know who I was anymore, because that was my whole identity. So you take a top performer and then they start failing and they start to really question themselves. And then I decided to get a coach and join a mastermind and got into personal development. And then I finished #1 at Salesforce and made $1 million. So it's like and then I repeated it the next year, and then had 4 great years in a row before retiring to start to run my coaching business full time. So I retired from corporate sales. And that was the mess that I made into my message is, hey, hard work is not enough. Grinding is not enough. You need these strategic selling skills if you're going to sell to large enterprises. And that to me, I don't think I'd be able to teach or be able to help people if I hadn't gone through that myself. Otherwise, like, you're not going to go get a financial advisor who's $100,000 in debt, who hasn't cleaned up their own finances, right? So that's kind of like what I teach is I just show people what I did. And, the fact that I got to number one at Salesforce for a lot of people has credibility and that's what they want, So I just share what I did and that's it.
Yeah, man, that's so interesting because like to come back from those instances as well, like you clean up your own mess and you know how to respond and really come back. So you talk a lot about high performers too and the top performers. What would you say is like most important to come back from rejection? To come back from like, let's say, closed deals or that are not closing and facing a lot of rejection. Like how do you bounce back from those instances?
I mean, the question is, why are you getting rejected, right? That's the
Good question.
real question, because if you're getting rejected because of your approach, then you need to change your approach. If you're getting rejected because of things that are outside of your control, like your company had a hiring freeze and was acquired, and it was a big deal that like literally even the CFO can't do anything. It's a spending freeze across the board. That's a little more outside of your control. So if you keep losing over and over and over again and getting rejected over and over again, if it's happening in volume, it means that your messaging is not aligned and the problems you're talking about that you solve are not problems that people actually face. So you need to really understand, like, why is it that companies work with you? What is the before and after state that your best customers can tell you that your company helped them with, right? What was life before you? So you got to go back and talk to some current clients and see, how they're benefiting. So now you can start to believe it and share with your clients, what. So if you're selling, it doesn't matter what you're selling. If you're selling podcasting as a service for big companies, go talk to clients that have had doubts and concerns about, launching a podcast because maybe they didn't think it would produce revenue or they thought it would be too much work. And then say, what are you getting from the podcast? How much exposure does this help you with? Have you gotten any sales from it? Okay, great. What would you say now to your old self before you started? Well, I just wish we would have done it sooner because this has been the best thing for us. Okay, perfect. So then you go to your next client. It's like, hey, well, it's not a rejection. It's an objection. A rejection is, I don't want it. An objection is, hey, I don't know if this is going to work for me. I don't know. I don't trust this. I don't maybe know if this is worth it. Right. So you got to get to the real objection as to why they're hesitant and not view it as a rejection. A rejection is, I don't want this, period. I've gotten everything I need from you. I understand the value and I still don't want it. Whereas an objection is, I'm busy and I don't know if this is worth it. And if it's truly an early stage objection where it's like happening early, it's nothing to do with you. It's just they're busy and they have other priorities. But if it's late stage objection, then in those cases, you can take them back to that other client that you've had success with and have them talk to each other and say, hey, Bob over at X company had the same concerns. He was really hesitant to jump on board, but now here's what he's seen. Would it make sense for you to talk to Bob and kind of hear for yourself from another client that had similar concerns to you, right? And now you're helping them to come to the conclusion themselves as to whether or not this would make sense to move forward to. So most rejection is just a lack of information. It's not because they're rejecting you. Very few times when you get to that proposal and you walk them through the solution and they say no, usually it's like, oh, I'll think about it, maybe. And then you just need to get to the root of what they're concerned about and address it. But if it's truly, I don't want this, then ask for feedback and like, okay, well, is there anything I could have done differently? Do you think the solution's not aligned? And like, then the true objection might come back again, and then you could address it. So it's like a no doesn't mean no. So I just gave you like 6 pieces of advice there. But number one is, if it's early stage in the rejection, don't treat it as rejection, treat it as objection. And if it's later stages rejection, really get to the truth as to why they're hesitant to move forward or what they're concerned about. And then, if if it's just not something that they care about, or if it's not something that's going to help them, like move on to the next client. Like if you have a big pipeline and you have a lot of stuff working, you're not so concerned about running circles around the same one client. That's your only deal. Like you have so much, it's like, here it is. If you want it or not, just let me know. And there's no pressure because you have so many other clients and there's so much opportunity. You don't want to waste their time or yours. And it's on them. Look, they can decide if they want to work with you. You don't need to pressure or convince them or influence or persuade them. That's all bullshit. You just need to show them how it's going to help them and let them decide whether or not they want or need the help.
That's so interesting, man. It's like, it's a flipping, you flip the card on, shoving a solution in their throat, and you're helping them see the benefit of it. My question off that is, in terms of objections, how do you come back when someone says like, look, Ian, we love the solution. It works really good for our company. We want to use this, but the price is an issue and we're not happy with this current price. Like, how do you overcome that kind of issue?
Ideally, it depends what you're selling. For me, if I have someone say I can't afford this coaching at this level, I have that, and they'll say, can you give a discount? Can you do something like that? And I just don't. I say it's not fair for other members in the program for you to have a different price point than them. And if you're concerned about this, here's the level that I recommend. I had someone ask me last week, they said, we're looking at Sandler training versus you. Sandler's half the cost. And they do one-on-ones. And I said, well, then go with Sandler. That's what I told him. And he did. He went with Sandler. I was fine with it. He wanted a sales call. I didn't jump on the sales call because I'm too busy to jump on sales calls right now. I just literally am delivering coaching every day, all day. So I don't have time for that. I just hired my first sales rep. But the price objection was like, it's not apples to apples. You're not getting a Sandler coach that was an AE that was number one that can help you at your stuff. Like you're getting a trainer that's like a hired coach or whatever. Like the coach matters. The person who's doing the training matters. So if you want elite coaching, you have to be prepared. And if you're not able to do that, that's totally cool. I get it. And I was cool with it. I didn't even think twice about it. So I think you have to know your value. The number one key to negotiation is to know your value and know what you deliver. And how do you know your value is you ask your clients what value they're getting. So if someone complains about the price and says 18,000 is too high for one-on-one coaching, I would say, okay, why do you feel that way? Well, I'm concerned about, spending 18,000. That's the price of a car or college degree. I'm like, well, you're getting an MBA in sales. You're getting a coach. Well, what's the cost of not doing this? You said you missed your quota the last 2 years in a row. That's why good discovery is really important. You said you missed your quota the last 2 in a row. Your on target earnings is 300,000 a year, but you're only making 190. You're on the verge of getting fired. What happens if you don't do this?
The price of inaction.
Yeah, the cost of inaction. So you need to know what the cost of inaction is. And you get that by good discovery up front and really understanding, why are you here? What is the current situation? What's the pain? It's going back to that spin stuff I was telling you. So you can use that when they say the price is too high. Say, well, you told me these things. Do you think this is relative to, what you're like? If I'm doing a training workshop for a sales kickoff or something, I charge 30,000 per hour and a half to do a sales kickoff, right? So that, they might say, well, that's crazy high. And I'll say, well, what's your average selling price? Okay. My average selling price is $60,000. How many reps are we going to train? Well, there's 50 reps there. Okay. So if one rep out of the 60 gets one deal or half of one deal because of what they learn, what I teach, like, how can you, where do you feel like that is too high? I'm training 100 people. All we need is half of one rep to get one deal. Do you feel like by me teaching this, it's usually because they don't think it's going to work. It's not because they don't think the price is too high. It's because they don't think it's going to work, or they don't trust it's going to work. So in that case, I'd say, is it really that the price is too high, or is that you don't think that this is going to be effective and you don't think that this is going to work? It's like, well, if I knew we can get a couple sales out of this, I wouldn't blink twice about it. Okay, well, great. Why don't you talk to another client? Here, or I'd send them some videos of what clients have to say. And the sales, I'll say, here's all the sales people got from my coaching program. And I'll send them a page of testimonials. And so you want to collect all of that stuff. You want to literally have all of this stuff absolutely laid out for yourself, right? That's what you want to do. So if I go here and I go to, again, and I'm showing you this because it's taken me a long time, but
It's important, man.
I have this all built out. So if someone wants to know what it's like, they can watch a video. They go to the testimonial page and then they scroll down and they can read how much people closed as a result of working with me. 3.5 million, 434,000 ARR today. Best money I've ever spent, right? I have all of these things and it goes on and on and on. So get that social proof so they're comfortable knowing, okay, this guy, I built strong relationships, 5x my deal size, and have more time with my family. Highly recommend. Like, if you don't have this stuff, then how are they going to trust you, right? So it's like, again, this is someone I did with Pavilion, and she was awesome. The best live training sessions I've ever seen. So it's like, if you don't believe it, like, go talk to some other clients, go hear for yourself. So that's what I'd recommend, is like, collect all those client testimonials and see the value they're getting. And then you're going to start to believe it. So then, when they say it's too much, you can say, well, here's what people have gotten as a result of this. If you knew you were going to get similar results, would you still think it's too much? Well, no, I wouldn't. Okay. So how do we get you comfortable? Do you want to talk to some referrals? Do you want to have any questions from me? Because this is what I deliver, and this is what you can expect if you bring me in.
Man, that's amazing, because I think not enough people leverage the social proof or like use it the way you're positioning it. You're positioning in terms of, okay, if you feel objection, this is how it can help you. Whereas most people just put social proof on a website and leave it as is. I definitely do as well. Sometimes I don't even name drop stuff for reference points, but that's very, very like, it's useful, it's impactful, because you're like, okay, you've an issue with the effectiveness of this coaching. Here is a solution. Here's a load of these reviews that solve that
And I'll
problem.
send them to talk to each other. I'm like, go talk, like go call anyone on here, go reach out to. There's hundreds of them. Like, I
Of
don't
course.
care. I want them to feel, here's the thing. It's a mindset shift. I want people to want to work with me. I don't want to have to sell them. I hate selling. I know that sounds like weird as someone who's a sales expert or whatever you want to call me, but I can't stand having to sell somebody. I want people to want to work with me because they know it's going to help their team. So I don't do outbound. Everything I get is inbound. It's designed that way.
Of course.
So I don't know. You could say, well, it's because you have a good brand or you're known or whatever, but I built that. It wasn't like that in the beginning.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Some people are like, well, yeah, because you're Ian. Well, I wasn't before. Now I'm just doing the work. So if you genuinely go in with an intention of serving and helping make your client successful, and just treat the discovery as, can I help them? Where do they need help? Do they want my help? What's the impact of doing nothing? Then by the time you get to your price and your solution, typically, they'll see the value. And if they don't, you know what? Like, you could always negotiate and figure out what would make sense as far as payment terms, but I'm not a huge fan of discounting. I'm more of a fan of like, okay, well, you're saying it's too much. Are you trying to work around a certain budget by a certain time? What does that look like? What if we split payments? So you can pay up front half, and then when we deliver 30 days, another half, or we can do a quarterly billing. I just did this with one of my big clients where I'm doing training for them. It's a corporate client, and they wanted quarterly billing. So I'm like, that's fine. So we bill them every quarter. I did a 1-year program with them, and they're happy. So it's like, you just kind of figure out what the real objection is. Usually the price is not the objection. It might be the cash flow.
Yeah. 100%, man. That's so interesting. There's so much points there that I'm gonna have to go back over this several times to listen to. You mentioned there as well about, inbound versus outbound. So of course, like, there are different dynamics. And maybe when you're in Salesforce, you were doing a lot of outbound as well. I
It
imagine
was
at
all
that
outbound
point,
at
right?
Salesforce, and now my own business, it's all inbound.
So it's completely different dynamic, I guess. And you had mastered that message. So when you were going about that and you had your list of prospects, whatever, how do you go about the outbound process?
Where do you want to start? I mean, it's like, I mean, look,
Let's
I sold to enterprise.
messaging.
I sold to enterprises,
Yeah,
large enterprises. So I was selling to Fortune 500 companies. Um, Activision, Blizzard,
yeah,
they make the
yeah,
Call
yeah.
of Duty, World of Warcraft. So that was one of my clients. And when I approached their CEO and their CFO, we met with their CFO. It was all about profitability and helping them improve profitability by getting passive viewers of esports to become players, active players. It was the journey from taking someone who's watching esports on Twitch, watching other people play video games, to inviting them to live events, to go watch it in person, to getting them to buy merchandise, to then getting them to actually play, and marketing and understanding who these consumers are that are viewing all their content, and actually taking them from an anonymous unknown viewer to a known viewer. And our technology enabled them to do that, right? So that was all research that we did ahead of time to understand, well, where are they focused? Well, they're focused on esports. Well, what's their revenue look like? It's declining. What's their monthly active users declining? So we built this point of view, this hypothesis on how and where we help them, and we took that to their top level executives. So from a prospecting standpoint, it's not generic, hey, we're Salesforce, we do CRM, and we can help you with, connecting with your customers across sales, service, and marketing, which is the generic messaging. It was, hey, I noticed that you're trying to get into esports, but revenue's flat in these other areas. What if we were to take this growing esports audience and convert them to players? Would that be worth talking about? We have some ideas on how we can help you do that through, our marketing automation technology. Would that be worth the discussion? So it was like very specific, very kind of high level, and then very consultative, right? A lot of
Yeah.
these deals were 7 or 8 figures in nature, and they took a lot of time to meet and to interview people and understand what they were using today and how long it was taking and where their pain was and what their goals were. And it's like you're not so much selling the solution, you're more selling the vision of a better future that helps them achieve their top level goals. And then you're doing a lot of discovery to understand what they're doing today. And then you're showing them a roadmap on how to get to where they want to go, including a very tailored, customized demo of what the technology would look like using your platform. So these are very long sales cycles. The pitch decks are, oftentimes, quite they take weeks to build out.
Yeah.
And they're going to boards, right? These presentations are going to boards of directors, and they're asking for 7 or 8 figures to buy something. You better be prepared to defend it. So there's a custom demo component, there's interviewing of a lot of people, there's a compelling business case. I mean, at Salesforce, we had a team that was just dedicated to helping account executives like myself build out these business cases to justify the investments there. So it's not a transactional sales motion. It's a very long strategic selling motion where you're acting as a consultant to help the businesses transform their
Yeah.
business to achieve their goals. And so it takes a long, it's more like project management and quarterbacking, a lot of resources on both sides to get to the finish line. And it's a lot of those skills.
How do you get yourself in the door for those situations? So,
You
of
build
course,
the
you said the
point of
pitch
view.
there.
You
So the
research the
point of
hell out
view.
of the company. You read through their 10Ks. You listen to interviews, and you figure out what are they trying to do as a company, and then how does my product or service align? And then you basically prospect to their executives and say, here's what you said, here's what I heard, I think we can help you in these areas, would it make sense to me? And then you call and you video and you call and you email and you just stay on them. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
pure persistence, but the messaging has to be relevant and
Yeah.
specific and personalized to them as a company and them in the individual in their role. So it's like literally, like it's the opposite of a batch and blast, spray and pray approach to prospecting. It's very targeted, it's very specific, and it's very much geared in researching them and how you can potentially help them based on what you learned in that research.
Would you say that some of the people you work with are wasting time on the wrong stakeholders? So they're reaching out to the wrong people. They're not getting in front of the right stakeholders when they're reaching out and trying to build a relationship.
Yeah, it happens all the time. People, make the mistake of being too low in the organization. And the people that are lower in the organization, when I say lower, I'm talking about managers, maybe directors. They're important, and all humans are equal. But when it comes to having authority to sign off on $1 million projects, typically that doesn't happen below a VP level or a C level in many cases. And so what happens is people get stuck at a low level, and then they fail to, when that person asks for the big money or asks for the, the budget approval, they're competing with a bunch of other resources, their peers who are also asking for money. And the CFO has to scrutinize how and where to invest that money. And so you need to be working directly with the people who can say yes. You need to be engaged directly with the decision maker. And this is like sales 101, but I feel like in large enterprises, it's easier to get fooled and think that your person has authority because they're so helpful and maybe they're a director. But the reality is that it's not one decision maker. There's oftentimes 5, 10, 15 people that have to weigh in throughout the process that you have to meet with in these big companies. And so you're really multi-threading. And the sign of a good champion or a good mobilizer is what there's a great book called The Challenger Customer, which gets into this in detail. But the sign of a great mobilizer is their ability to bring in all the key stakeholders and be able to sell on your behalf when you're not in the room. And the Challenger Customer talks about how to empower your mobilizer to sell during all these other meetings. So it's like creation of executive memos, creations of customized videos that they can share internally, giving them access to custom demos, like giving them tools that they can use to sell internally. That's really key for these big companies. And you have to have someone who has access to power with the other execs that can say yes. So if you're too low in the organization and they're not bringing in any other people, they're not connecting you, that's probably a sign that it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually mentioned that book. I actually read that book in college. Would you remind? It was recommended to me. It was like second year college. So that's like a long time ago at this stage. But that was my first introduction to sales, like understanding like champion, understanding like how to get to these key buyers. And that was a long time ago now at this stage, which is wild.
Yeah, it's funny how Challenger is a great methodology. It's a great approach. I mean, I've used it for years in terms of how to become a challenger with these companies. And I just I can't advocate. There's a lot of really, really good strategic sales playbooks out there that that I'm a big fan of. But one of my favorites, Challenger Sale and Challenger Customer are two of my favorite books.
Awesome. And before we finish up, I want to ask you what's one of your goals for this year? What do you really want to achieve?
I'd like to break 2 million in revenue. I did 1.5 million. So do 2 million in revenue this year. That's definitely like a top line goal. I'm running a marathon in 2 weeks. So I'm running my second marathon in 6 months. I'm running the Los Angeles Marathon. And I'm raising, I've already hit the goal of raising $5,000 to support Children's Hospital Los Angeles as part of my training plan. So I did a couple posts on LinkedIn and my newsletter, and people responded wonderfully and contributed, and was able to raise $5,000. So that goal is in process right now. So run the marathon and raise the money. And then another goal is, for me, my biggest goal is to make my product as good as possible, where people will renew, where they will continue to be this desired place where it's a destination for people who want sales coaching and training. Like, so in that realm, there's a lot of mini goals of a new website to optimize the product. I have guest speakers coming in every month. I have biweekly office hours. I'm hiring. I just hired a sales rep. I hired a community manager to help drive engagement. So deliver the best coaching platform in the world for enterprise and strategic sellers in SaaS. That's absolutely the goal as well. And then on the personal side, I have a beautiful family. I have two young boys, my wife, my kids. We are very blessed and happy. And one of the things we like to do is we like to go up to the mountains and go to Lake Arrowhead, which is a beautiful lake by Los Angeles, about an hour and 45 minutes. So I'm in the process now of, I'm just starting, I'm going to be selling one of my rental houses and buying a vacation house in Lake Arrowhead
Nice.
for my family. And that will also be a retreat center for my coaching program where I can take people up. We could all stay at the house and go on kayaks and boating and just do some content in beautiful places, do hiking. And I just have this vision of having everyone there and just learning in a beautiful setting and connecting and building community. So that's another big goal for the year is to buy that place and bring that dream to life.
I love that, man, because it all kind of works in together. You have the professional goal, the fitness definitely helps your profession, and everything works together, man. So it's going to be awesome.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you so much for your time, man.
it's a lot. It's a lot to take on, but I mean, and the other goal, honestly, my I guess my biggest goal is just to simplify where I'm not so running so hard all the time. I mean, I
Yeah,
in the pursuit of goals, sometimes you forget about yourself. So I think my biggest goal is to have that inner peace
yeah,
where I'm not stressed or worrying about what I need to do. Cause right now it's just such a growth rocket ship that I'm on, and there's always so much going on. And I feel like if I can hire and delegate and just make it to a place where I choose how and where I want to spend my time and have enough space in my calendar to let me work on the business versus in the business, that would be very healthy for my mental state, for my family. And that's something I'm keenly aware of right now. So I just hired a spiritual coach to help me with um, getting more free space for me to connect to, greater purpose, higher power, and just some of the spiritual goals that I have as well.
it's an ongoing process, though. You know what I mean? Don't be too hard on yourself. Like it happens. It's going to be an ongoing. I
It's
think
it's a blessing
everyone
and a
realizes
curse.
that.
It's a
Yeah,
blessing and a curse. It's great to be driven. It's great to have success, but if you're going so fast that life flies by and you can't stop to enjoy it, that's also a problem. So that's kind of finding that balance for me is really important.
but you do recognize it, though. That's the importance. Like
Oh,
you're
fuck yeah.
recognizing that.
I
Yeah,
I am
but
aware
not a lot
it's
of
the
people
way you
do.
feel. Well, I know a lot of people don't, but I've done so much work in self-development, meditation, spirituality. I mean, I've done so much on myself to get to this point that I'm very aware of when my body's telling me I need a break and my
Yeah,
body's telling me that I need to rest and recover. So exercise honestly is a huge part of staying focused for me because when I don't exercise, I can feel it, right? I can feel more
yeah.
sluggish. When I exercise, when I meditate, when I get sleep, like I'm generally a lot more productive. So those are things that for me are non-negotiables in being successful.
Of course, man. Like I said, massive thank you. I really appreciate everything, man. I love having this conversation. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. So, like I said, massive thank you. And again, we should do more sessions in the future, man. I feel I'll come back to it in a couple of months or another year.
My pleasure, man. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for diving so deep in the sales stuff. I hope it was helpful for everyone on the call.